Hi, this is Savannah,
And this is Brian from the Dorky Diva Show,
and you're listening to Star Wars.
the best place for below average Star Wars.
In a world where people need 80s and 90s movie reviews, two regular Geordies combine forces to bring you the Brother to Brother 80s and 90s movie review podcast. Check them out on Twitter, YouTube, and all decent podcast vendors.
Star Wars, best place for below average Star Wars.
Hello there, and welcome to the Star Wars Show, the best place for below average Star Wars. I am the Geordie Jedi Pete.
I'm Jason Hondo Ling.
And I'm Kat Riesielke.
And it's the year 2022. Book of Boba Fett is here, and we are going to be reviewing the first episode today. This episode premiered on the 29th of December. It was Chapter 1, Stranger in a Strange Land, directed by Robert Rodriguez and written by Jon Favreau. Before we sort of dive into sort of any spoilers, which we will be talking about in this episode, so if you haven't seen Chapter 1 of the Book of Boba Fett, definitely pause this podcast here, go and watch it, and then come back. But before we dive into any specific spoilers, go to you, Kat, first. Sort of, were you happy with what we got for episode 1?
Yes, definitely. Just from the title alone, the Book of Boba Fett, each episode is going to be sort of acting as a chapter, and I thought as an opening chapter, this really set the context of what to expect in upcoming episodes. Starting sort of with flashbacks to the past, never an easy thing to do, but I thought this episode really handled it well and handled the balance between past and present really nicely. Never felt jarring. And it really sets out the background. You could technically come into this episode having not seen the Return of the Jedi. I mean, who does that? I have no idea. But you could come in with very little knowledge of Boba Fett, and you would still understand this story, which I think is amazing writing by Jon Favreau.
Yeah, definitely. I think the way the story starts with, if you're not familiar with Boba Fett or the events of Return of the Jedi, you start off with this man in trouble. He manages to escape, and then he's sort of left for dead, and then you see his journey go on from there. Jason, let's throw it to you. Just overall thoughts. Did you enjoy the episode? Was it what you were looking for?
Oh, I loved every second of it, but I had a feeling I would. First, I stand corrected. We had a discussion a couple of months back about possible leaked titles. And as per many leaks, they proved to be pretty much a load of rubbish. But they were fun to discuss, so that's okay. But yeah, for a first episode, it was absolutely amazing and set the scene ready to go into the scum and villainy that I'm sure we're going to see over the next coming season. Definitely looking forward to it.
Awesome. So just to give everyone a quick breakdown, we sort of start off with Boba Fett barely escaping the Sarlacc that swallowed him at the end of Return of the Jedi. We then see sort of Jawas come across him, steal his armor, leave him for dead. Ends up getting captured by Tusken Raiders, and sort of he's unable to escape their encampment. And that's sort of a flashback sequence to Boba Fett before the events of the Mandalorian TV series. And then we're brought back into sort of the modern day storyline that we're going to be following, which is Boba Fett sort of waking up from a Bacta tank healing process to going about his day as the new head of the Hutt cartel on Tatooine and sort of the challenges that that's going to bring. We'll go to you, Cax. Obviously, you mentioned that the flashbacks before. So I love the fact that sort of the flashbacks seem to take place when Boba's in the Bacta tank. So it's sort of like, is he dreaming this? And he does mention to Fennec Shand that the dreams are back. I love the fact that he's in the back dam. We see the water, and then we get a shot of like Camino in the water there, and then we also see young Boba, played by Daniel Logan, picking up his father Django's helmet and looking into it, and sort of a little bit of a backstory for this character and where he started his journey. Obviously, he was born on Camino, and sort of his lust to become a bounty hunter, and the man he is started when he saw his dad die, and that's when he decided to take on the armor himself. Do you think we're going to get many more flashbacks throughout the series, Card?
Absolutely. I think the series is going to continue with these flashbacks to explain how Boba not only got out of the Sarlacc pit, but then how basically he became stuck on Tatooine, because it's only after meeting the Mandalorian, Din Djarin, that we know he can sort of take back his armor and his position basically in the criminal underworld. So the flashbacks have got quite a bit of explaining to do, and already they're actually showing us, quite a bit about Boba Fett. I mean, firstly, it explains that finally, the one thing that fans have wanted to know for so long: how did he get out of the Sarlacc pit? It's quite similar to the Legends storyline, in that he uses grenades to get his way out from his jetpack, and here he's using fire, so quite a nice link into the Legends timeline there. And then we get sort of a the good, the bad, and the ugly once the reference once the Tusken Raiders have captured him. And I just loved how they made sure the Banthas were riding in single file, just like Obi-Wan said in A New Hope. It's those little details that they put in to these episodes that make fans happy. And then seeing the Tusken Raiders, these are unlike the ones we've seen in the prequels, not even like the Mandalorian. There's this sort of nomadic feel to them. The tents don't look permanent. The massive watchdogs, keeping the camp safe. And you've got those sort of different tribal wrappings and robes, with the chieftain having much more elaborate designs. And the writing, both by Jon Favreau and the screenplay, I thought was so well done, because the cinematography, there is so little dialogue, or certainly understandable dialogue. We don't know what the Tusken Raiders are saying, yet you can figure out quite a bit from the body language, posturing, even sort of some of the sounds they're making. And we see Boba is a man of moral. He doesn't just run off and leave that Slimo Rodian. He protects the Tusken child, even though the Tusken child has been a bit of a brat. So I think we're really getting to see, I think it's almost like the analogy is he's lost his armor, and we're getting to literally see under the armor of Boba Fett, because we're seeing what makes him tick as a man and not just as a bounty hunter.
Yeah, like, he clearly wants to escape, but he's also trying to do it with the least possible resistance possible. So, he waits for everyone to go to sleep. He tries to escape, and the dog wakes up, the Mastiff wakes up, and he knocks it out but doesn't kill it. He tries to escape, and then he ends up having to fight one of the Tuskens. He gets defeated. But again, he's not sort of going to kill the Tusken when he's fighting it. So he's very much sort of trying to get away from them, but he's trying to do it with the least amount of resistance possible, if that makes sense. Yeah, I thought it was very sort of good to sort of, if you want to make us care about this character, because, Boba Fett, you could call him a bad guy. if you look at, Han Solo's the good guy, and what he does to Han, he's a bad guy. So now we've sort of got to bring him back to us being sympathetic towards him. So yeah, I enjoyed sort of the stripping the arm away from him to sort of show us his humanity, show us his emotions. And I think you're right when like that moment when he's even when he sort of finds the water and he drinks the water, and the kid goes in with the stick and he catches the stick. He probably could knock the kid out at that point and run away, but he doesn't. Because again, it's trying to show us that this guy doesn't want to be as violent as he has been in the past, perhaps. Jason, what was your thoughts on the flashbacks and how they were used to sort of tell the story of Boba escaping the Sarlacc pit and the events leading up to the Mandalorian?
From my point of view, the flashbacks were just what this needed. I love the introduction where we see, the flashback to Camino. As you said, we see the young Boba Fett picking up the helmet, which I thought was amazing that they seem to have used the original footage but have somehow technically rejigged it so that it's actually a completely new shot. So that was really, really good. Then obviously, seeing the escape from the Sarlacc pit, as you say, everyone wanted to know how he got out of there. So I think we always knew that had to appear in this first episode. And the way they did it was absolutely brilliant. And, the effects. I love the fact that there was, a stormtrooper stuck down there before Boba Fett got in there. And then obviously the more we see with the Tusken Raiders, I love the way, because obviously in Mandalorian we've seen that the Mando has a relationship with the Tuskens, so it's quite interesting now to see the Boba Fett's relationship with the Tuskens and the way, as we leave it at end of the episode, he's very much there with the Tuskens, so you would almost assume that's where he's been hiding out until he gets his armor back. So for me, I think we got a lot more to come from the flashbacks to fill in the gaps of, obviously when the end of Return of the Jedi and the beginning of the Mandalorian, or when we found Boba Fett in the Mandalorian. What I did find interesting was obviously we don't know how long he's been in the Sarlacc pit. We know obviously by the time he comes out, it looks like Jabba's barge has been pretty much ransacked. So to me, it feels like he's been in there a while before he finally gets out. So yeah, I'm looking forward to finding out a little bit more about the past of what's been going on with Boba Fett.
I wonder the time frame of that, because they sort of make a point of him needing oxygen. So I feel he must only be in the Sarlacc a couple of days, if that. And the fact that Jawas have just got to the wreckage when he climbs out, if that makes sense. Like I don't know whether Jawas will go back to wreckage they've already picked apart. So I thought, he's been in the Sarlacc pit for like a couple of years, and he finally gets out. But the do point if he wakes in the Sarlacc pit for however long he's been there for, and like straight away he's like, I need oxygen, and that stormtrooper's got oxygen.
Yeah.
Or is it oxygen? I don't know, but that's what it implies to me. Is it some sort of coolant maybe for his face? Who knows? But yeah. But if that is the case, and he's only been in there, say he's been there a week tops, and he gets out, then obviously we've got another like 4 years of story possibly before he comes across the Mandalorian. And I get the impression in the Mandalorian we see him, he's very much training the ways of the Tuskens, and he's also been watching the Marshal for a while, but decided not to get his armor back. And he only decides to go after the armor once the Mando takes it. That's the reason why he sees Mando take the armor is because he's watching the marshals. My interpretation of that scene in The Mandalorian. So I wonder how long he spends with these Tuskens. Is it going to be a couple of years with these Tuskens? Of him sort of finding himself and sort of learning their ways of survival and the ways of the desert. I like what you were saying about the Tusken Raiders, and like, you know, in The Mandalorian, in Book of Boba Fett, we're sort of seeing a more sensitive side of the Tusken Raiders. And while New Star Wars seems to be showing us a sensitive side of the Tusken Raiders, it's actually showing us the Jawas to be very vicious. Like, you know, the rob him and then he's alive, and then like they knock him out to leave him for dead. I get taking things from a dead man, but you've sort of, you know, you've knocked him out, taking his armor, like you potentially killed him there. And I think that obviously the Jawas in Mandalorian, when they steal from the ship, and they only make a deal when they want the egg. So they are painting the Jawas to be quite vicious in this sort of Disney era.
Yeah, they're certainly not the friendly sort of comical characters that I think we've seen in the past, you know, where they weren't much of a threat really in the original Star Wars. So, like you say, now there seems to be you know, I think I'd be more worried if Jawas turned up than I would be if the Tuskens.
I think
No,
it's sort of
definitely. And I
making
love
the
Kat's point about
Jawas
how
more animalistic and the Tusken Raiders sort of more human in a way. And so that's why the Jawas are quite, you know, they're quite savage. They're just taking whatever they want for sort of their own selfish gains. And there seems to be more of a sense of sort of community, and dare I say, the Tuscans seem a bit more sociable.
Yeah, I think you're right there, Kat.
well, I mean, the Tuskens are keeping that Rodian and Boba Fett there for a reason, and they're not going to eat them, I don't think. So, like, and the Rodian seems quite happy to sort of live with them. Like, you know, when there's a chance to escape, the Rodian's like, no, I'm gonna sort of be friends and alert them when you try to escape. And when they're digging for those water canisters, whatever those are, like the Rodian's quite good at it. Seems to be, and quite happy to sort of give the water to the young one. What did you guys make of these random water canisters in the sand?
They were quite an interesting concept. It does make me wonder, are they based on sort of anything? I know that I think in like some survival cases in the desert, you can cut open a cactus, and like inside the cactus is quite juicy. So that's sort of like a similar kind of idea. And cacti also have tap roots that go really way down where they store water. So I think it's kind of based on biology, but with the typical sci-fi twist of Star Wars.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I personally, to me, it just reminded me of they were looking for coconuts, but that was about it for me.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, is it a fruit or is it a sort of seed? Like, what is it they're actually like finding? Because they're not really attached to anything; they're just like buried, and not even very deep in the sand either. Like they're quite, you know, they weren't digging very far to find them. We'll go to you, Kat. Obviously, you know, the way the Mando wins over the Tuskens is by helping out the young Tusken Raider. What did you make of sort of him and the young Tusken and how they fought that monster in the desert?
Well, that was very sort of compelling to watch. Not just the fight scene, but also Boba's interactions with this child, because this child Tusken, like I just said, he is a bit of a brat. He's got his wooden stick, and he thinks himself, you know, all tough and grown up when he really isn't. And I think, you know, Boba's sort of tolerating the situation. When he sort of takes that drink of water from those buried, whatever they are, when the boy then sort of tries to tell him off, he doesn't do anything to the boy. He just says he wants a drink of water. And he's respecting their different culture, and he is giving the young boy respect, even though it could be said that the boy doesn't deserve it. So that then leads into when they fight that monster, this desert creature, desert centaur, whatever it is nasty. And looking at the design, I think you can definitely see influences from Harryhausen's Kraken from Clash of the Titans. Definitely seems very similar, especially in the arms.
Yeah,
And that fight,
you summed up what I thought there. This was a homage to Harryhausen with that creature itself.
yeah, sorry Pokemon fans. I do see where the resemblance is coming from, but Harryhausen got it first, okay? And but so that yeah, so then we've got Boba Fett taking on this creature, to save the boy. He doesn't have to do it. He could have let the creature kill the boy, then kill the creature. So it really shows that Boba Fett has morals. He has a very good sense of honor. He's got a code, and obviously he strangles that creature with a chain, just like Leia strangled Jabba the Hutt, which is another great Flash reference to Return of the Jedi. So it's all together when you bring the fact that the boy wasn't very nice to Boba Fett, but Boba Fett then is very good to the boy. It really just shows that compelling relationship. And then when they go back to Tuscan camp, and the boy is, look at me, roaring around, showing off this head, and I love the chieftain. He's just standing there, and you can see just through his body language, he knows the kid didn't do anything. He knows the kid couldn't bring one of those things down. And I love that silent communication between him and Boba Fett, where he just silently offers him water. In the desert, water is the most precious resource. So to actually offer that freely is such a mark of respect.
Yeah, and one thing I noticed in that shot as well is that the kid rushes forward with the head, and I'm pretty sure the kid's mastiff, the dog, is like sort of walking close to Boba, like as if it respects him. But obviously, early in the episode, it sort of doesn't respect him. It's Gordon. It's like alerting people when Boba's doing things he shouldn't. But then here, because the creature does it sort of attack the dog. The dog sort of walking with Boba, like as if it likes him now, which was really cool.
Yeah,
that
for me,
would be a really cool reference as well. And sort of he's like the Mastiff is taking on like a new master because of that respect. So yeah, that is a really cool little thing to notice.
For me, the creature resembled a cross between a terror dog from Ghostbusters, the way its claws were, and the way the Scorpion King looks in the Mummy 2 when the Rock comes out as the big Scorpion Mummy at the end. I don't know if it felt I don't know if it was Star. I don't know if the design felt Star Wars to me or not. I'll probably need to watch it again to decide that.
I felt it didn't really speak Star Wars particularly. I mean, it does kind of fit in with the Krayt Dragon, but it did feel very different for a Star Wars design.
See, you hit on the nail on the head for me with the Harryhausen link, because if you look at the history of the early Star Wars and in particular the Rancor, that was very much influenced by Harryhausen's work, and obviously Phil Tippett, who did a lot of the animation, was a student of Harryhausen's, I believe. So to me, that felt like this was Favreau's way of acknowledging that history of Star Wars. But I think by having the look not being what we'd seen before was also their way of introducing something a little bit new. Because obviously, let's face it, everyone's faced a lot of criticism for not bringing new looks to Star Wars. And that to me was part of what made that creature very special in some ways, because it wasn't what you expected, and yet it was still very traditional.
Yep, and then obviously, so that is sort of the last flashback we get is Boba coming back with the kid after he's killed the creature for the kid. He saved the kid's life, and the Tuskens are sort of, the Tusken chief gives Boba some water, and it's like, we respect you now. And then we sort of both, talking about the main story now, the modern, after the events of Mandalorian. Let's talk a bit about that. Talk about what were your thoughts on the people sort of coming to see Boba to pay respects, Kat?
That was full of Easter eggs. Wow. You've got the droid, I think it's an 8D8, something like that. And from Return of the Jedi, he was the droid torturing the other droids in the basement, and he's now working to introduce everybody giving tribute. And he still wants to torture people, so definitely perhaps that droid needs a bit of rewiring. You had the Trandoshan that Boba used to work for coming to give tribute, and if you actually look, it's sort of Wookiee fans cover your ears. What the Trandoshan is actually holding is a Wookiee pelt, because as we know from the Clone Wars, Trandoshans hunt Wookiees. So to actually give a Wookiee pelt is actually a sign of respect. But yeah, Wookiee fans, close your eyes at that one. And I love sort of how both Boba Fett and Jabba the Hutt need protocol droids to translate all the myriad languages coming in, because Fennec's sitting there not really having much of a clue. But the Major Domo, okay, we've got slimy politician vibes coming from him, working for the mayor. Did not like that guy one bit. And yeah, I hope Fennec and he have a little chat, because he was very annoying.
Yeah, I thought he almost seemed out of place with his like line delivery and stuff, and like his accent. It took me a bit out of it, but obviously he's the whoever the mayor is. I'm assuming the mayor is a
I believe it's the
Twi'lek.
Ithorian, isn't it, from the trailers?
I think the mayor's okay, and obviously has these Twi'leks as slaves, maybe slave workers. So it's going to be. I think that's going to be the story point going forward, is sort of Boba fighting the mayor of Mos Espa.
It could well be. What's a bit interesting actually is the title of this episode is A Stranger in a Strange Land, which is actually a biblical reference from the story of Moses, which in some ways resembles that of Boba Fett. Boba Fett is cast out from the criminal underworld. He has to fend for himself in the desert, and I wonder, is his? I've been wondering this ever since the trailer's coming. Is his new law on Tatooine going to be try and end slavery? So I think, yeah, I think that's going to end in conflict with the mayor.
Yeah, I think the title's great because I think when Boba's with the Tuskens, he's obviously a stranger in a strange land. But also, I think Boba now in Mos Espa, he's a stranger in a strange land because his role has changed in that society, and that society's changed since Jabba the Hutt died. I noticed when he does visit that sort of establishment with the live music and the drinks, that the two people who greet him, the two Twi'leks, are definitely slaves. They're not wearing a lot of clothes. They offer to polish the armor for them. And then when we meet, I've forgotten her name now, the sort of the third main cast member who's announced for the series.
Madame Garza Fripp, I think, is her. Well, Whip is her name. Jennifer Beals' character.
Yeah, when we meet her, she seems a bit like a higher level, but also is working for someone else. And the way she strokes Boba's arm and she gives him the money. I think she's possibly a slave as well, working for whoever actually runs that establishment. Really. So yeah, I think you could be right about the slave thing coming in. Just going to you, Jason. I want your thoughts on when everybody. There's two people who give Boba a lot of respect. Although the Trandoshans may be a little bit backhanded, but he's expecting that from that type of race. We see the two Gamorrean guards who, come in, who are very loyal to the masters, and he says, "If I spare you, will you be loyal to me?" And they say yes. And then obviously, we actually see them be loyal to him, which is really good. So then don't double cross him. And then obviously we see the sort of the mayor's right hand man sort of be not very respectful. When he comes, sort of how do you think Boba dealt with these first meetings as sort of crime lord, and sort of where do you see it going?
The whole thing with Boba is he's describing himself as a crime lord, but I don't think he is a crime lord, and I think that's part of his journey, because he has got too much respect. And like you say, first of all, with the Trandoshan, was it Doc Strozzi? It's quite funny the way Boba Fett says, "Oh, I used to work for him. It feels a bit strange." And Fennec Shand then says, "Not as strange as it does for him." And it's the whole role reversal, but the way Boba Fett is taking it down a very different route. Although he's seeing himself as the leader, he wants to be on an equal footing almost. And I think that stems back to, if you look at Boba's story, the way he grew up on the Camino, and the way his father, when you think about it, they were almost slaves to the Kingmonans, for the creation of the clone army. So you've got this whole thing that he's been on that side of it and is now gaining respect. First of all, I would also like to say the leader, the Trandoshan leader, was actually voiced by Robert Rodriguez. So you had a nice link there. These directors do like getting themselves into their own episodes. But yeah, so you've got him, first of all, showing, his respect almost. Then you've got, as you said, the Gamorrean guards, and that was nicely done, where basically, if it had been Jabba taking over, the first thing he would have done is executed those that were loyal to whoever he'd replaced. So by then giving them this chance to make a decision, and I think Fennec Shand fully expected them to betray Boba Fett, and yet, as we saw in the sequence later on, they came up and they in effect saved him, purely because he'd given them that chance to live. So it just goes to show that his plan sort of works in some ways. And then obviously you've got the juxtaposition then of all these people that seem to think that they deserve respect straight away. So you've got the Major Domo, and yeah, it's interesting to see what's going to happen as it goes on. Who is he going to learn to trust? Who, I've got a feeling in the Jennifer Beals character is going to at some point betray Boba. And, I think there could be a bit of a conflict coming between her and Fennec Shand that I'm hoping will be a bit of fun.
Yeah, I mean, after greeting these people who came to the palace, Boba goes out to Mos Espa himself. They go to that cantina, the establishment, and they give him a lot of money in his helmet. There's sort of, I imagine, like a what's the word? Protection money. Like you give to the local gang. But then when they leave, they're attacked. Kat, who do you think these attackers were, and who do you think they work for? They seem to be all wearing the same type of gear, had the same type of weapons, so they're obviously a unit of some type.
Yeah, that Garza, Madame Garza, she's shady. As far as I'm concerned, I would bet those Republic credits that she tipped off the mayor, and those are his goons coming after Boba and Fennec. That's there was just so much tension in that cantina, and you're right. She was paying him off, and I think that the mayor has definitely probably influenced a lot of the people of Mos Espa, because if you think about it now, there's been a power gap. There hasn't been anybody on the throne apart from Bib Fortuna, but Bib Fortuna was probably very malleable, very easy to control. Boba Fett now represents a threat to, I think, the mayor's control. So there's definitely going to be
There-
more tension there between them.
there's quite an interesting theory that I've been reading about over the last few days that I like the idea of, and also I think it ties in with the way that Star Wars seems to be going in the literature side of things at the moment, and that is these very organized this organized group that are trying to take on Boba Fett at this point could be related to Crimson Dawn.
Maybe. I think we'll have to wait and see, won't we? I think they're possibly working for the mayor, but who's to say the mayor's not connected to Crimson Dawn? I think from those establishing shots of Mos Espa, the city seems to be thriving at the minute. So there's obviously a lot of cash in the city, probably through spice trade and probably slave trade if that's still there. Mos Espa is where Anakin was a slave and Shmi was a slave, and Kitster was a slave. So is that still there? We will find out. But yeah, I found it very interesting. What did you make of sort of Boba's health in this episode, Kat?
I think Boba's health is actually a very important analogy for this series, because he was at the top of his game, but now he's injured. But I don't think he's just sort of injured physically. I think he's got a lot of mental baggage that he needs to sort through. I'm not convinced he's totally over the loss of his father from that flashback to the Geonosis arena where Django was killed. So I think we're gonna see a physical but also metaphysical journey of healing through the series, of where Boba physically is made better by the Bacta tank treatment and gets stronger so that he can fight and earn the respect of those on Tatooine. But also this sort of spiritual sense of healing where he comes to understand who he is now. He's not Boba Fett, the bounty hunter, anymore. He's calling himself a daimyo. In Japanese culture, a daimyo is a feudal warlord who serves in the shogun, and I think that's a very important aspect now of his growth and his journey. Is he's got to figure out who he is as he's healing. So, I've seen that people are saying that, Boba Fett seems pretty weak in this episode. Hello, he's survived the acidic digestive juices of the Sarlacc. He survived the Jawas mugging him and leaving him for dead in the blistering sands of Tatooine. He survived being dragged along, beaten up and tied up by the Tuscans. He survived on very little food and water and managed to take down some kind of desert centaur. Hello? Boba Fett is clearly not weak. He has got so much resilience and just will to survive. And I think that will to survive is possibly even sort of stronger than his physical strength.
Yeah, there was a fantastic part in the fight where he sort of grabs hold of the electrical button he's getting hit with, and he takes the energy, and you see his face get really angry, and then he sort of fights the guy off, and it's sort of like it's probably the thing that actually takes the most out of him. And then he's able to fire the rocket at the man who's climbing up, tells Fennec to bring the guy back alive, and then, like I said, his next instruction is for the Gamorreans to get him to the Bacta pod.
And that's strength too, admitting when you need help and when you do need to have that healing time. That's another kind of strength.
Definitely. Jason, what did you make of the fight sequence? Did you enjoy it, and what did you make of the use of the rockets and not use of the jetpack, which I thought was interesting?
Yeah, no, I loved the fight sequence and the way, as per usual, it looked like they were completely outnumbered, surrounded. Um, I loved the fact that the Gamorreans guards came in to help out, and obviously, like we've discussed, I think earlier on at one point, the way first of all you see Boba take out the guy that's climbing up the wall with his rocket. And then the next thing, obviously, he sends Fennec Shand after the other two, and he asks her to bring them back alive. But obviously, she makes the decision that she only needs one of them, so that's okay. But yeah, the whole fight sequence was very much, again, this guy's outnumbered, but he's going to beat the odds, whatever. And I think that's part of the character of Boba Fett. We've already seen through the flashbacks that it's going to take quite a lot to take Boba Fett down.
Yeah, do you think we're going to see him using the back of the tank sort of every episode, and that's how we're going to see more flashbacks, and then by the end of it, we're going to see a fully healed and fully operational Boba Fett?
I've got a feeling, I don't think, and Kat sort of alluded to this, I don't think he's ever going to fully heal because he has been through so much. And let's face it, the idea now is that he's an older character. I'm wondering if the Book of Boba, the Book of Boba Fett, I'm hoping it's going to be more than one series. But does that allude to this is his end? This is his story. And obviously, we've seen the beginning. This, we sort of are seeing the middle part through the flashbacks. So to me, I think this is going to be the end of Boba Fett's story, and that's what they're setting out to do. But I think the back to tanks are, like you say, a handy tool to go back to the flashbacks. Obviously, we know with a body that battle scarred, it alludes almost to the same thing as with Darth Vader, who obviously relies on the back to tanks to keep his body going. So, it's only natural. It seems to be that this is part of Star Wars history that, when you get to a certain age or you've had so many battles, the back to tanks are there to keep you going.
Yeah, definitely. What did you guys make of sort of the runtime of the episode, and sort of also the fact that we got a little bit of story, but in the grand scheme of things, like, not much happened. It sort of set itself up to tell us a lot more in the next episode, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it was the perfect tease, and it's similar to obviously in The Mandalorian. The first episode, there was a clear story, but still that was very much right, this is the sort of story we're going to tell, but there's so much more to tell. And I think that's what they've set up with this one. We've got a lot more to come, a lot more to fit in. And as we know, it's going to be 7 episodes. So I was hoping almost that they were going to do the same as season 2 of Mandalorian, and we were going to get an almost feature-length episode. But I'm wondering if they're saving that for us for the end of the season. So we'll just have to, I think there will be flexibility, like with a lot of the Disney Plus series. The run times do tend to fluctuate. And it's very much, dependent on what story they want to tell each week, which is nice in some ways because they're not governed like so many other television series on, ordinary networks, where they have to say, right, we've only got 45 minutes, we've got to fit in all the adverts. They don't have to worry about that here. So from a storytelling point of view, that makes it stronger. So I think we're in for another exciting 6 weeks to go.
Yeah, I sort of agree there that it could have been longer, but it's like any good book. The first chapter, the prologue, they just give you the information to set up the story. Whereas The Mandalorian was basically a whole story contained within one episode. The Book of Boba Fett is going to be all these linking chapters. So the story is going to unfold. So we're going to have the patience to watch it unfold, which leaves plenty of room for cliffhangers. And I think having those flexible runtimes is good. I agree. I agree there with Jason because you never want time to feel wasted, and you never want it to feel like it's going too fast. So clearly, John Favreau and Robert Rodriguez thought that this was the sweet spot for this episode, and as a starting episode, it did what it set out to do. It introduced Boba Fett again, showed us what's going on in the present, some of what's going on in the past, and it did it very well.
What are your thoughts, Kat, going into sort of next week's episode? What do you think we're going to get?
Well, I'm hoping we're going to have Fennec roughing up that sort of ninja she caught on the roof, and where she just brilliantly decided to get rid of the other one. I mean, her answer to basically all of Boba's problems is either do something to make them fear you or kill somebody. So I'm definitely hoping for a bit of Fennec feistiness. I'd also be interested to see now if this is when Boba Fett is going to go visit the mayor, who I think is the Ithorian based on the trailers, and try and learn a bit more now of why there's so much tension between him and the mayor.
Yeah, I think I can see the episode starting next week with Boba being in the back of that tank again. Obviously, that's where it ended for him in this one. So we can get another flashback to start it off. Another dream sequence of him and the Tuskens and some other stuff maybe. And then we're going to see him getting woken up from the Bacta with Fennec saying, I've brought back alive one of the attackers. And then he's going to tell them who, I imagine they're going to torture him. He's going to tell them who sent him or give them a clue. And then if it is this mayor, then Bo might go and see the mayor. And then we'll kick on from there. I liked how, well, I was surprised, but I liked how centered on Tatooine this episode was, and I wonder if that's going to be a trend for the rest of the season. Jason, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, my feeling is this is going to be very much a Tatooine story. It's, this is Boba Fett sort of marking his territory and taking on the scum. And as I've said, here and in the past, this is the scum and villainy side of Star Wars that George Lucas obviously at one point wanted to bring to a TV series. Although that was going to be set on Coruscant. So I think this time they've decided to go back to that original line from Obi-Wan and stick to that. Which also gives us, the whole thing. Let's face it, everyone loves Tatooine. You've got a clear imagery. You've got a lot of different races and that we're already used to. So you've got that storyline already in place. So you don't have to create that. It's just a case now of telling a really good story. And that's what I think Robert Rodriguez, John Favreau, and obviously the one who cannot be disturbed, but Dave Filoni, for one thing, for me, this episode had a lot of Dave Filoni in amongst it as well.
What are you hoping to see in the next episode?
Um, I'd like to see the whole, like you say, the interrogation. Maybe a bit more. I think we're going to see how, because I think it's pretty obvious that Boba Fett obviously hung around with the Tusken Raiders for a while. So I think we're almost going to see a sort of relationship building there as well in the flashbacks. And also, we need to find out exactly what's going on with the political side of Mos Espa and everything, because there's obviously, this mayor character that we've already been sort of introduced to in the background is going to play quite a big part, and I think there's clearly going to be a very big power struggle. There's one thing I wanted to say that we haven't got to yet, is along with this being a new series, it was very closely tied to The Mandalorian with the score. And I have to say, for me, the score and the soundtrack for this was truly beautiful. I know I've discussed this with Kat previously, in that I felt that what they've done this time as well is they've gone to Tamora Morrison's Maori history, and when you hear the Boba Fett theme tune, you've got the chanting, and it almost sounds like a haka going on in the background. I really like that, and it's, to me, that felt tribal again, linking it to, and I think that's why Boba Fett with the Tuskens is perfect, because it's sort of, he's found his tribe. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing a bit more of that.
Yep. Kat, what did you make of the soundtrack?
It's very distinctive, the audio. Very different to what's come even recently in The Mandalorian. Ludwig Göransson has definitely looked at different influences for music for this, and it really shows. Again, I agree with Jason that I think there is that sort of Maori influence on the music, especially during the end credits scene where you've got this massive chant going on. We've never had anything like that in Star Wars before, not even in Revenge of the Sith. So that was, the credits come on and boom, you sort of slapped in the face with it. It was really beautifully done, and I think we've only just sort of got a taste of what the themes are going to be. I suspect that maybe Fennec is going to have perhaps her own theme now, because she is, a main character of this series. So it's definitely going to be interesting, and if there is going to be sort of any links as well, because we know that for certain bits of The Mandalorian we had links back to the original trilogy and the music. So it'd be interesting to see if any of that may come into some of perhaps like the Jabba the Hutt Palace songs and background music, if that will be woven into it at some point.
Yeah. Did you notice a certain keyboard player in the cantina establishment?
Yay! Max Rebo made it! He got off the sail barge!
Is it him, or is it just another species who likes playing keyboard?
No way. That's gotta be Max Rebo. Nobody else could play the keyboard that well.
I just don't know how he would have survived the explosion of the sail barge.
He must have got off. He must have done a stage left exit and got off the sail barge before it went boom.
Maybe he was cushioned in the fall by the body of Jabba the Hutt, because let's face it, there's plenty of cushion there.
Maybe. Do you think we'll see? I know in the trailer we've seen Slave One in action. Do you think we're actually going to see much of Slave One this series?
That's an interesting one. I think we're going to see Slave One, but I actually think it might actually just be for travelling across Tatooine, unless we see in a flashback that Boba Fett left Tatooine at some point. That's one possibility. But I think with this story, it's going to be Tatooine based.
I think that too. I think if we're going to see the Slave One, it's going to be sort of only for local travel missions, or maybe just to scare off rivals. But I don't think we're going to be going to space in this series.
Jason, we'll go to you. What was your sort of your 3 favourite things about the episode?
One, I think, has got to be, like Kat alluded to earlier, the way this was done. Tamora Morrison, and I spoke about this in the review I did for Jedi News. He's done a very good, to me, homage to what Jeremy Bulloch had set out with the character. Boba Fett didn't have to speak. It was the mannerisms. It was the way he carried himself. That was the character. He really is a man of very few words. And that's why I really liked the way still, even in the scenes where he was holding the audience, he let Fennec Shan do a lot of the talking. It was purely his presence, and that was one of my favourite things. 2, as I said, I loved the soundtrack. Looking forward to seeing more and more of what can be done with that. And the 3rd thing, which my youngest actually said when she watched the episode with me, she really, because it didn't have Grogu in it, she wasn't that fussed about watching the episode until it got to the end. And she sat there quietly as the credits. And I think she enjoyed the soundtrack, but it was the artwork. And she sat there, and I think she took more in from looking at those images they put up at the end than she did actually watching the entire episode. And that, again, it's the whole package with this, which they've carried over from what they've done with The Mandalorian. So I'm looking forward to seeing more beautiful artwork as we carry on through the series.
Yeah, I think obviously, with the fact, it's chaptered, same as Mandalorian. We get the concept art in the credits, and Ludwig is doing the same guy who composed The Mandalorian is composing this. I think it's all designed to set it in the same universe, same story arc, where we can have these stories intertwined down the line. Boba's already appeared in Mandalorian, but I think we're going to see him hook up again later, and I think there's other stories are going to tell which are going to be similar. I think you are trying to get the vibe the same, so that you sort of treat it as sort of one universe, almost like the MCU does so well. I think that's what they're trying to do here with the Disney Plus series of Star Wars. Kat, what was your favourite 3 things about the episode?
One, when Boba Fett says to the Massive, "No hard feelings, mate." I mean, that's like the most British thing to say, and I need that as a meme to send to everybody. 2, that he trusts Fennec Shan so much. He admits to her, the dreams are back. He lets her do a lot of the talking and the fighting. So the trust between him and Fennec. And 3, I think, for me, would be the new costume signs of the people that we see in the Mos Espa and the Cantina. There's links to Galaxy's Edge. There's links to the original trilogy. And it all balances being new, but still very much recognizable as Star Wars. And that for me was my 3rd.
I think one of the things, I think you hit the nail on the head with, when Fennec comes and wakes up Boba from the back of the tank, he obviously has 100% trust in her, because she could just shoot him while he's in there asleep, and he'd be dead. But he obviously trusts her where, he's at his most vulnerable when he's in the back of the tank, because he's defenseless. But she's got his back, so that trust is there 100%. Do you
I think that's sort of built from The Mandalorian in the fact that, when Boba Fett found Fennec, she was dying. She was at her weakest moment. So Fennec is repaying him so that when, Boba Fett is vulnerable in the Bacta tank, she's paying back that trust.
Is it just a life debt, or is there something a bit more to their relationship, do you think?
No, I think it truly is a platonic relationship just built through trust, shared experiences in the job of bounty hunting. They've both survived this long in a profession that is very dangerous.
I'm so glad you didn't ship them there, Kat, because I was worried about you coming up with this beautiful love story for the pair of them.
For once, I am not going down the ship aisle. Nope. No.
Good girl.
There's nothing wrong with that. People having that opinion, though.
I mean, yeah, they totally could, but people have been shipping the two Gamorrean guards really hard on Twitter.
Well, this is what I wanted to talk about, because I've got some weird things I noticed in the episode. So the first thing, and I noticed it in Mandalorian as well, is that for some reason in the in Jon Favreau's world, Gamorrean guards don't wear a lot at all. They're like trying to portray them as like sexy Gamorrean guards who don't wear a lot of clothes. Where I remember them in Jabba's Palace and Return of the Jedi wearing a lot more.
And they've lost a lot of weight compared to what they used to carry around in Jabba's times. Maybe it's because there wasn't the food around, because by the looks of it, Bib Fortuna had most of it.
Well, I wonder how much of that weight on them was actually like the armor and their outfits. Obviously, because we're not seeing them wearing much. Like, obviously, they're not wearing much. But so yeah, I thought that was weird. I thought that the fact we've got a RX droid, the pilot droids for the Star Tours ride, was sort of a working the gambling tables. Was cool. But also a bit weird. And the other thing I found weird was in that battle when those guys turn up, Boba never once pulls his blaster that he's got to his side, and he could also just jetpack out there, like fly away, because they surround him, but he could fly out, and he never does that. Those are the things I found weird about the episode.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's very true.
But he does say he wants to rule with respect, and if he starts shooting people, then he's going to be starting to incite fear and panic. So I think, he must have a reasoning for it.
Yeah. What did you guys make of sort of how empty Jabba's palace was?
Yeah, I like that because I think that's going to be part of Boba's challenge to bring back that as like the power base. It looks, let's face it, it looks like from what we've seen, Bib Fortuna's let it slide big time. Obviously, he sort of tried to carry on where Jabba left off, but I think by him being weak, that's led to the mayor character taking over, in effect. And I think what we're seeing is the dilapidated Jabba's palace, because of the effect of having Bib Fortuna sat in the throne. So it'd be interesting to see. I think as time goes by, from the trailers where we saw where Boba Fett gets everyone round the table, I think we're gradually going to see the palace start to fill out again, and I think that's going to be part of Boba's story.
It's definitely a cup to be filled. The palace is empty because currently nobody sort of respects Boba Fett enough to be there and serve by his side. So I think perhaps from a story point of view, the more it fills up with other aliens, humans, the menagerie of Jabba's old creatures, I think that's going to be a sign of Boba Fett winning over the people of Tatooine.
Yeah, I think as he gets more people on side, they'll start turning up in the palace, and as his empire grows, we'll see that. Kat, any final thoughts on the episode you want to share?
I think it was just a great episode. It answered fan questions, it brought something new, and it's a great opening chapter that's been just brilliantly written by Jon Favreau, and I loved the cinematography that Robert Rodriguez used for it, and I can't wait for the next episode.
Jason, any closing thoughts on the episode?
Yeah, I've just thought I've just come up with my dream sequence that I want to see. I want Boba Fett reunited with his old pal, Hondo Anaka, and I want to see Hondo bring him one of those. Is it Kowakian monkeys?
Quarky lizard monkey.
Yeah, yeah, because obviously Jabba had one, so Boba should have one as well. And who better than for Hondo to bring one as a gift to his old pal Boba? But yeah, no. Aside from that, I want to see where this story's going to go. I think we're going to see Boba Fett take back control of Tatooine. But I think there's going to be a battle to do it, and I'm looking forward to seeing where that leads us. I'm also I don't think we're going to see the Mandalorian in the Boba Fett series, but let's see if they prove me wrong, because I know that's something that everyone's going for. But we'll no, I'm looking forward to sitting down and watching the next episode, and then coming back and talking about it.
Do you think we'll see Omega in this series?
That's an interesting one. I don't think they'll move Omega from animated to live action yet. I think that's something that's going to come maybe later on down the line. But who can tell with these guys? They'll pull something out of the hat. You know, there's already loads of rumours about. Well, I know everyone. There's still the big thing that everyone wants to see Sebastian Stan as Luke Skywalker, and I have to admit, the more fan art I see, it just makes sense for that to happen at some point. But who knows where they're going to go? That's the one thing I do love. You know, the end of Mandalorian last season, there'd been so many rumours that it was going to be Luke Skywalker. And if you'd asked me right up to that last episode, is it going to be Luke Skywalker? I'd have said, no, it's going to be someone like Rex, or it's going to be Ezra turns up, or it's going to be Ahsoka returns again. I just didn't expect it to be Luke Skywalker, and I think that was by far the best kept secret ever.
I don't think we're going to see Omega either, but there is the possibility, because I don't think in this season, but I wonder if they'll do it in a comic or something. Omega is directly Boba Fett's sister. You know, she's not a clone. She's been raised exactly the same as Boba Fett, in the sense that she's not been age enhanced, so she's aging the exact same pace as him. So, you know, could he find some sort of healing with her as well? But currently Omega is in her own story in the Bad Batch, and you know, Boba Fett's on his story in his own series. We're not gonna get a crossover yet.
Well, obviously, Omega would be, you know, sort of an adult, I think, now in the storyline, in this timeline. And I think she is his sister for all intents and purposes. So for someone who cared so much about his father, I think having his sister, meeting his sister, would be a big deal for him. So I think it's going to happen at some point in the timeline, whether he's already met her before the events of Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, or whether it's still yet to happen. But I think it's going to be a very interesting dynamic when hopefully that does happen. But I think that brings an end to our discussion on the Book of Boba Fett, Chapter 1. Obviously, there's 7 episodes, so there's 6 more to go. So 6 more weeks left. Episodes we've got directed by Bryce Dallas Howard. I think John Favreau's going to do one. Dave Filoni's going to do one. Steph Green's going to do one. And Kevin Tanchiron's going to do one. And I think also, I imagine Robert Rodriguez is coming back to do another one as well. When it is, I don't know. So whether it's the next one or they take a 2-parter, or whether it's back for the finale, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I think it's set us up for this sort of Tatooine adventure, big Western feels, which is sort of similar to the Mandalorian, very similar to the Mandalorian vibe. But I think that's all on purpose, is to sort of set this up as sort of one sort of continuous storytelling initiative, similar to the MCU, rather than going backwards and forwards like the sequel trilogy in Rogue One and Solo, which didn't work so well. I think Disney are like, let's tell it in sort of not necessarily chronological order, but have them sort of all make sense as they sort of as it's going forward, so it's easy to follow for those who aren't necessarily huge Star Wars fans. Jason, any closing thoughts before we finish the episode?
Yeah, I'm going to come up with a couple, well, sort of non-Star Wars but Star Wars linked. One thing I'm going to mention is Disney said farewell to Bob Iger at the end of last year. Big Bob is no longer at the helm. So it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward. But I think with him bringing in Lucasfilm, and obviously he played a real big part of convincing George Lucas to part with Lucasfilm. I've been reading articles and they said how, it wasn't just a case of he was doing a business deal. Him and George actually built a really big relationship, and, it took a lot for George to trust him. So, Disney have got a long way to go now to keep on his legacy. And I've just literally had a flash up on Jedi News, which is exciting news for all of us toy fans. Toys R Us are back, and they've launched a website, and you can sign up as a VIP to get information on the return of Toys R Us. So for me as a big kid, that's quite exciting. So I just wanted to chuck that in there for us guys. I've already gone on, signed up, so I'm a Toys R Us VIP now.
I think for me, there's a reason why Toys R Us died. So if it's coming back to be the same, then I'm not interested. Go away and die again.
Yeah.
If they're going to come back and learn from the mistakes of the past, then fantastic.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping.
But you've got, Hasbro Pulse has moved into the region. So it's like, do we need Toys R Us now? Like, it's very interesting times. Well, I'll wait and see how the paint dries on that one, I think, before I go signing up or anything.
You're still stung by that rancor, aren't you?
Well, I mean, that's got nothing to do with Toys R Us, you know what I mean? But I think I remember Toys R Us towards the end, and like it not being good, and
it didn't move with the times, and that's what's to me. That's what's happened to a lot of the high street. But I'm quite
not even that, Jason. Not even that. There was times I would go to Toys R Us, and like the boxes would be, they'd have box cutter marks on them, or where they hadn't taken care to get them out of the packaging. They'd be like scruffy as anything. And like, if I'm coming to spend £20 on a figure, keep it as mint as you can, because guess what? I want it looking good. So like I said, we'll see how they get on with that. So have they said, did they take any payment details off you to sign up for VIP, or just an email address?
No, it's literally just email and mobile. There's apparently another announcement coming on the 5th. So they're basically drip feeding information, by the sounds of it, via emails and everything. For me, I'm just obviously for me, Toys R Us was the big toy store to go and visit. I can remember getting my first push bike from Toys R Us in Southampton. So for me, there's a big nostalgia thing. But like you say, yeah, you're dead right. Towards the end, you went in there was stuff chucked everywhere. No one cared about anything. The stores, they didn't seem to spend any money on them to actually make them exciting. I could never work out why every Christmas they didn't have a massive Santa's grotto in there. They could have, dragged people in. It should have been the toy store experience that everyone wanted to go for, and they just dropped the ball there.
Yeah, definitely. Because I was a big Toys R Us fan as well. In fact, in my wedding speech, like Jeffrey the Giraffe gets a mention in my wedding speech. Like, do you know what I mean? but that last 5 years before they finally crumbled, it was horrible. A horrible place to go. Horrible place to shop.
And the sad thing is, I the last few times I've been into other big toy stores, they all seem to be going down that route, which they seem to have dropped the ball big time. Which I'm hoping maybe whoever's rebranding as Toys R Us is gonna pick up the ball, because let's face it, the kids deserve somewhere to go where they can physically touch the toys and actually see what they're buying, rather than going on a computer screen and ordering from Amazon.
Yeah, I mean, my local Smith's Toys is good, I would say. Like its shelves are usually pretty full. It's displayed nicely. Packaging's kept nice. Sometimes they're behind on waves, but I think that's down to distribution problems from the suppliers themselves. Like, do you know what I mean? But I've noticed that, like, take wrestling figures, for example, up to date with wrestling figures. Transformers, up to date with Transformers. Marvel Legends, up to date with Marvel Legends. Star Wars, sometimes up to date, sometimes not. But I think that's down to Hasbro distribution. But yeah, I think they do an all right job. Putting it back to you sellotaping someone up, Jason. There.
What's that?
Sounds
sorry.
Like you're sellotaping the mummy. Sounds like you're sellotaping the mummy up.
Oh no, sorry, I'm having issues with my laptop tonight.
Right.
It's going out the window later.
Kat, any closing thoughts on sort of on Book of Boba Fett and this new sort of Disney Plus era of storytelling that we're in before we move on?
Yeah, I've just realised the menagerie is empty in Jabba the Hutt's palace because the HasLab didn't get funded.
I was hoping they would cut down to the the floor, where obviously underneath the floor would be where the Rancor is, and obviously just to say like in the past Jabba would hit the button and that the mayor's mate would go down and get eaten, but obviously the Rancor's not there because it's dead. But they never really teased that with any stuff. But yeah, maybe it would be a different story if we had got the Rancor. Sadly we didn't. Let's wrap it up, guys, and get ready for the next episode. Jason, where can people find you on social media?
On the Twitter, it's at HondoLing. And I can't remember any of the others, so we'll just stick with at HondoLing.
And Kat, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me at Kat Kylo, both with K's, on Twitter. Always happy to talk Star Wars and anything Kylo Ren related.
And you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Geordie Jedi Pete. You can find the podcast on Instagram and Facebook at Star Wars Podcast. And you can find the podcast on Twitter at Boars Star. Guys, thank you very much for coming along and talking Book of Boba Fett with me. It's been a pleasure, and Happy New Year.
And to you. And to you, Kat.
Happy New Year to all our listeners.
Yes, and you guys listening, thank you very much for tuning in. Happy New Year. Happy Book of Boba Fett time. And remember, always tell that to Kanja Club.
Hello, Star Wars listeners. This is Savannah Odit. You might know me as host of The Dorky Diva Show with my co-host Brian Balance. I am also producer of The Adventures of the Zolan Dart, which is a Star Wars-inspired audio drama that we produced over the last year. If you love stories about smugglers, courage, heroic characters, and maybe a few foes along the way, you should go to thedorkydivashow.com and listen to The Adventures of the Zolendart today.
Shout! We've got your pigs.
Were any of the critters harmed?
What did you do now?
I didn't do anything. I just freaked out for no reason.
It was nice doing business with you again. Maybe next time we could deliver something less temperamental.
Now, what you call temperamental, I call fun.
Hey, is there a place nearby where I can make some repairs?
3 clicks south of here, you'll find a small spaceport. They should have what you need, as long as it's nothing too big.
Dynamic class? My stars, you don't hear about many of those still being space-worthy.
It's been in my family for a while.
She's pretty great. Any chance you have a hover cart we can use to load up?
I'll check out the HoloNet to see if anything new has come up in the sector.
My name is Sereth Kol. I am the chief here on Gamai. My people and I have been experiencing food shortages as of late due to unforeseen natural occurrences. We are looking to hire someone.
I say we take this one. The pay is great, and it's the type of job we're familiar with.
Welcome. You must be Captain Otoa. I've already sent word to Pack 2 to expect you in the next cycle or so.
You told him we were coming before we even accepted the job. That's rather presumptuous, isn't it?
Perhaps, though once I received confirmation that you were interested and on your way here, I couldn't help but hope.
Fair enough. Well, we'll be back as soon as we can.
Well, that's not good.
Is that blaster fire I hear?
So you're the one.
Captain, it sounds like they want to do this the hard way.
I love when they got some fight in them.
This is bad. This is bad. We're about to have a lot of company.
I'll see you soon.